Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
My name's the dog, Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in pints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as for the... Well, she's with me every day, but not on this podcast. It's my wife, Mary. How are you today?
Hello, I'm good. How are you, Timothy?
I'm very well, thank you, Mary. Frank is still on paternity leave from Thought Bubble Audio, and so you have decided to, or you have graciously accepted my invitation to Beer with Geeks, even though you don't drink beer. Which is very bold of you, I think.
I had a seltzer tonight.
Ooh, yeah.
And not a hard seltzer, just a seltzer.
It's a regular one. What flavor was it?
I think it was pomegranate. No, blueberry acai.
We don't have any pomegranate in the house.
Whatever the aha ones are in the fridge.
Okay. The polar ones? We have polar ones in the house.
No, it was a different one. No,
the aha ones? Oh, okay. Well, good for you. I'm drinking a blueberry lemonade polar seltzer right now because it's late and I didn't want to start a beer. No, I just didn't want to start one so late at night. So here we are on Beer with Geeks, not drinking beer, but that's okay.
Seltzer with Geeks.
We do it all the time. We drink beer so seldomly on a show called Beer with Geeks. Doesn't matter. So, Mary, I'm having you on the podcast because Frank, as you know, and as our listeners know, Frank hates fantasy. I know. Why am I friends with him?
Frank!
I know. So Frank hates fantasy the way that, I've said this to you before, but the way that you and I hate the person describing directions to a board game.
Spare us, please.
Yes, please. I'd rather stick the thimble from Monopoly up my nose and have it travel through my body than you explain the rules of Monopoly to me.
Monopoly is really not even that bad.
I know.
It's like the games where they're like, and here's the tome of instructions, and like there's too many scenarios.
I played a game once, I can't remember what it was called, the directions took 2 hours to explain before we started playing.
There's too many point value systems, and then if you do this, then you have to add this up, and only if you do this, then you subtract this, but in this scenario, you gain 5 extra bonus points. It's like, no. And just give me Uno.
And we're the people that couldn't figure out how many pieces of candy you would get if it was 5 for a penny and you had 25 cents.
So wait, for context, my mother was like, penny candy stores, they were amazing. Sometimes you could get 5 pieces of candy for a penny. So my father, my papa, used to give my mother a whole quarter to go to the penny candy store. So she's like, imagine how much candy I got. And we're all sitting in the car going, that's about, wait a minute, is that what, 1,400 pieces of candy? We could not do math. It was simply 5 times 25 would give you 125 pieces of candy. But could we figure that out? No. So don't expect us to play any complex board games more complex than Clue.
Correct.
I'd say. Even the game of life is a bit much.
No, it's not.
Okay, maybe
life is
it's exhausting.
I mean, life is exhausting. The game of life is fun.
Supposedly.
I
don't want to play a game where you have a mortgage. I have to pay a mortgage in my real life.
You could take the other route and not go to college and just live on the land or in your car, like whatever route that is. That's not what we're here to talk about.
You started this tangent.
I'm having you on here because you are a huge Chronicles of Narnia fan. Bigger than, I think, anyone else that I know, actually. I think you like Narnia more than C.S. Lewis's own grandchildren.
I don't know about that.
And so, I don't know. Well, maybe it pays their bills, so maybe you don't like it more than them. But you're a big fan of fantasy, and we have a lot of fantasy out in the world right now. Again, Rings of Power is coming out soon, which we'll be back to talk about. I'll make Frank not watch it. He'll be thrilled. Frank, don't watch this show that people will watch. He'd be like, okay. House of the Dragon was just released on HBO, and so when we've been watching the Narnia movies, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and we just finished Dawn Treader.
To be clear, the Disney Walden Media movies, not the BBC TV movies from
the 80s.
I think it's the 80s into the 90s. I read the other day today. It was like Silverchair came out in like 1998. I think. So they went that late.
Well, but you're a fan of the books too, right?
Yes,
You're not just. We're not just talking movies. So, like, when were you first introduced to Narnia?
In my elementary school library. So we had, like, if you guys remember, like, your library day. So you'd get to go in and look around and take out books, whatever you want to take out. So I would look at all the shelves, and they had a box set of. It's the same box set that I own too, with like the really pretty illustrated covers. They're all in the box. They're hard covers. So I noticed them one day. I said, "What are these?" I said, "They're pretty." Ooh, a fawn. I didn't know what a fawn was, so I was just like, "Ooh, a guy who looks like a goat and a man at the same time with an umbrella and a scarf. That looks cool." And I think even actually before I even saw that, that's the cover to the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But before that, the outside of the box set is the cover of The Last Battle, which is a unicorn wearing a gold chain, standing majestically in a field with blood dripping from his horn.
That was the cover that I had for The Last Battle.
Yes, that's so that's like the major box set that goes around. So I was just like, "What is this?" So I think.
How old were you?
I was I don't know, elementary school. I'm a weirdo though. I started reading The Lord of the Rings in 4th grade because I found it at the book fair, at the Scholastic Book Fair. So I don't know. I could have been younger or older. But I saw them and I was like, I want to read those. But for some reason, I think I maybe picked up The Magician's Nephew because it's labeled number 1. And I was like, I don't know if I like this. And then I don't know if I even finished it. Then I picked up The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I said, that looks more interesting, I think. So I ended up by reading that one and then did Caspian, Dawn Treader, Silverchair, and then was like, wait, now I have to go back and read them 1 through 7.
Okay, but now I have to go backward and call you a hypocrite for a second because
I was like, this is the one that should be read in.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, like, you had a whole conversation and you were so adamant that people should read The Magician's Nephew first.
Yes.
Even though it is not the first one written and it wasn't designed that way. Like, C.S. Lewis himself was like, I didn't know if I was going to do the next one every time. So, like, and you're clearly introduced to the world of Narnia in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and you have to know what Narnia is in The Magician's Nephew because, like, it starts with, this is a story about something that happened a long time ago when your grandfather was a child. It's very important because it shows how all the comings and goings between our own world and the land of Narnia first began. No context. What is Narnia?
Very true. I think that was that the last one published?
No, it is not.
The second to last one published?
I don't think so. Maybe the second to last one, third to last one, something like that.
It wasn't published. Like he follows the Pevensey kids first and then branches out into the other stories. But no, I personally, after reading them all mishmash like that and then reading them through 1 through 7, I feel like I was like, oh.
Yeah, but you had the information in your head. Like, if you're going to watch Star Wars, it would be nice to start with Phantom Menace, but it's not designed that way.
True.
You're supposed to be introduced to that galaxy through A New Hope, and then you go backwards and get that story.
Touche.
So
Tim's the English teacher here, so I don't know. I'm like, you could read it either way, however you like. Read it 7 through 1 if you want to read them backwards.
Don't do that.
But I don't know. I think you could read them either way because I've read them multiple times. I think I read them in order again in college. I think it was the first time maybe I read them 1 through 7 was in college because I was like doing a reread of everything. So let me do Narnia, even though these are super fast to read. If you're a college student and not in 3rd grade.
But if you're a bad college student?
If you're a bad college student, I don't know.
Okay, well, so go back anyway. So go backwards. So you put down to The Magician's Nephew because that was the same problem that I had when I was a kid. I told you before, like I started The Magician's Nephew. I couldn't get into it because there's no context for anything, and then it's like Sherlock Holmes still lived on Baker Street. So you're like, whoa, is Sherlock Holmes going to show up? Like, what's happening? And so if you start with Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then move forward, like, what would you say is the thing, the kind of the quintessential thing that makes you want to revisit Narnia over and over again?
We talked about this the other night. The lamppost, Tumnus at the lamppost. It's like that it just draws you in. You know what I mean? You're like, what's going on here? It's just like this it feels familiar, even if you're new to it, you feel familiar around it. Like it just feels like a story that you can go back to and feel comfortable and at home. And so for like full disclosure for all those listening, like we're Catholic, and I love the allegory of it, even though Tolkien and Lewis were friends, and Tolkien was like, I don't like straight up allegory. That's my Tolkien impression. It's pretty bad.
Sounds nothing like him, actually.
I don't like allegory because he'd probably roll his R's, but like the if you read The Lord of the Rings, you're like, oh, this is not allegory, but it's significantly, like, you could read it as a secular fantasy novel, or you could read read it as like a deeply rooted novel of faith without any mention of Jesus, God, anything. But then you go into the Chronicles of Narnia, and these two were very good friends, Tolkien and Lewis. You go into Narnia and you're like, oh, I see it. You're like, we're watching the movies and we're like, oh, Aslan is totally Jesus. And you're like, aha, I see it. So it's like he slaps you in the face with it, which is kind of cool. Like as a kid, I didn't get that. But reading them again as an adult, you say, oh, I see like the lesson that he's trying to teach and like what he's trying to pull in and how smart he is about it. It's pretty cool.
Do you think that he would have got you? Do you think you would have gotten it as a kid if someone was like, "That's Jesus"? Like, do you think it? Because I mean, it's pretty obvious.
It is pretty obvious. I mean, I think
like they are books meant for children. Like it's an allegory for children. It's not like it's not like a dirty joke in Toy Story that the adults will get, but the kids won't or anything. You know, it's supposed to be obvious for kids. So like,
yeah, I don't know if I was like really thinking that way as a kid. Like,
but how many stories are out? Like, I can't think of any other stories that are actual allegories for kids. There are stories with good metaphors, or there are stories with good running themes or whatever. But an actual allegory where there's like a single meaning, add and replace. People misuse the word allegory all the time, right? They're like, oh, it's an allegory for something. I'm like, but an allegory is like only meant to be one thing, and there is no other alternative reading of it.
Yeah, and that's where Tolkien was like, no, Lord of the Rings is not an allegory, because you can like, he filtered in his own faith life.
Your life, right? His life is his inspiration, and you can take whatever you want from it. And he had been on record saying like, you can take whatever you want from this. That's the point of a good story. Yeah. And Lewis, while agreeing, wrote this as allegory, which is fine. But I don't know any other story when you're a kid that actually introduces you to the world of allegory besides Narnia. Because like, I think the first time you really encounter allegory in school, like truly outside of Narnia, is Animal Farm, when people do that. Usually too young in school, because like it's short and it's a classic. It'll be fine.
It's got animals in it.
It has animals, and you're like, you have to know a lot about socialism and Marxism and...
You know what? It's funny, when we read Animal Farm, I don't even think my teacher talked about.
But we
read it in like 8th grade,
right? But that's the whole point of Animal Farm. Like, why would you?
Marxism in 8th grade,
right? Like, why would you teach Animal Farm without teaching that component? That's the point of the story. That's why it was written in the first place.
Yeah, I don't remember them talking, because like our history at that time, or social studies, was like world history. We're learning about like ancient Egypt, and then in English class we're reading Animal Farm.
Okay, Russia is part of the world, despite what shouldn't that have been anyway?
No, it was like ancient world history. Like,
oh yeah,
Mesopotamia.
It's always how it is. So let's go to the movies, because I've seen the movies and I've not read all the Narnia books, as you know.
Yep.
Don't sound surprised.
I know.
Yeah,
it's for a dramatic effect.
Yeah,
podcast.
R2's mad at you.
Guys, I told him that we couldn't be married anymore because he...
Say it with a straight face.
I told him we couldn't be married anymore.
Uh-huh. Yeah, how did that go down? Yeah.
Or at least...
He really has to work hard on reading the stuff.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Just work hard at reading the books.
You sound
Very soon. Or else we're going to have serious talks.
Okay, well, that's fine. I will read Narnia, and you will...
No, there's no there's no exchange here.
Excuse me, that's what marriage is.
No,
it's a clean
I watched
exchange.
Alien. I watched Alien.
One. You watched one Alien movie.
Nope.
Do you know how many Alien movies there are?
I don't care.
Yeah, that was also on my birthday. Okay, so I'll do it. That's the whole plan. That's what I'm going to say. We're going to do a
clean replace.
That's really deep. We're going to do a clean replace. So I will read The Magician's Nephew, because you watched Alien. Then I will read Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and you will watch something else. And then so on and so on and so forth. So get ready. You got 6 movies.
That you guys hear my eyes rolling?
Do
you hear them? Listen.
You have 6 movies coming your way if you want me to read Narnia.
Not fair. You read like a gazillion books in a week. Like, you could blow through these. Listen to the audiobooks. The audiobooks are really good.
You could. I'm saying you don't have time for a 2-hour movie? What do we do every day?
Watch Boy Meets World. Catch up on the Boy Meets World podcast.
Pod Meets World. Great podcast.
You should listen to
good.
It. It's great.
So how old were you? No, not how old were you. I can actually do the math, and I know how old you were when the first movie came out. But you were of a age to be influenced by Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, right?
Yeah, I think I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I was like, I want to write my own fantasy book. Like, that's what made... I have not written my own fantasy book. I am not a published author. that little spark never went anywhere. So, but thank you, C.S. Lewis, for giving me some sort of creativity and like wanting to like create a world of my own, which is really cool. But that like just like ignited the fire, I think, for like my love of fantasy and just books in general. I used to read like 3 books at a time as a kid, and now I can't get through 3 pages.
That's right. That didn't really answer my question at all, because I asked about the movie.
The movie? Oh.
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry. It's late. I am tired.
It's like it's a lovely story that you're telling. So, like, did you see the movie in theaters?
Yeah, I think somebody took me to see it. I don't know.
Probably a parent.
Yeah,
you have them.
I know. Yeah, I do. But my aunt used to take me to the movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What about the other 2?
Yeah, I think I definitely saw the other 2 in theaters.
Okay. Now, so we're talking about the movies, and I say to you really fast, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. What do you think?
Tumnus at the lamppost.
Okay. Prince Caspian.
Ben Barnes and his really weird accent.
Ben Barnes and his weird accent, and Dawn Treader.
I don't like the Dawn Treader. It's not. I like the book, but I wasn't. I think of all the things that they did that like were extra. That they just. I understand what they were trying to do with it, because they were like, we need an antagonist, we need evil, like just generic evil.
Yes, stories generally do need antagonists.
I know, but like the point of the Dawn Treader is that they're like, it's just an adventure story that's like kind of filler in between the other.
You can understand how a filler story does not make a good movie.
Correct.
Though.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I get it. But
yeah,
they're like, you need to get swords. There's a mist that's just evil.
I mean,
evil.
Okay, so all right, so like you don't like the mist that's evil, which I can get behind. It's fine. Yeah. It's really boring. Like you can walk out of Dawn Treader. You can walk out of Dawn Treader, come back 20 minutes later, and be like,
oh, yeah, there's no
well, they're still doing that thing, huh? Cool. But like the White Witch is just evil, right?
Yeah.
She's just evil. Sauron is just evil.
But they're characters.
So you don't like the mist
because
it's just ambiguous mist.
Yeah.
This reference will mean absolutely nothing to you, but it's Cloud Galactus. See, I told you it means nothing to you. But the people who listen to the show will understand that.
That's fine.
Yeah. So basically I'll tell you. So you've heard of the Fantastic Four, yes? Okay. So they made 2 movies. Well, they made more than that, but Fox made 2 movies in the early 2000s, and one of them is the villain. It's called Galactus. He's like this cosmic being that eats planets to survive. And which is like a very large being. Okay, and Fox.
I heard eats plants instead of eats planets. I was like, that's reasonable.
That's reasonable.
He eats plants.
Why is he mean?
He's just an herbivore.
Yeah, no, he eats planets. Yeah, with an E.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, especially when he comes to Earth. And the infinite wisdom of Fox decided that instead of making it a person in space that would come and devour the planet, he has this herald that comes and like readies the way, like makes the way. But instead of a person having a herald, it's just a giant space cloud that also has a herald. So it's like the mist, but the mist is like, I also have this knight that I send forth to do things. Ambiguous.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work. It does not inspire terror. Like, you're just a cloud.
Yeah. At one point, like, Eustace is trying to put the 7th sword on the table, and he's just like swatting at the mist with the sword, and nothing's really happening to the mist. He's just kind of like,
yeah, but it's magic mist, though.
Yeah. It just
yeah. All right. So let's go back to Lion Within a Wardrobe. What works about the movie in conjunction with the book?
I think they get the introduction to Narnia really good, like the going through the wardrobe, setting up the scenery. They get Aslan really well. Like, I feel like Aslan is like the constant, even in like the other movies where I'm like meh about certain things, like Aslan is always good, and they like really like choice. I
mean, it's hard not to be decisions. When you just have Liam Neeson's voice and a majestic lion spouting wisdom at you.
Yeah, I mean, but they like pull like real lines from the book. I feel like his dialogue is very close to the book. But I feel like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the closest to the book in terms of like the sequence of events and how they present the events. There's no like real tangents or like add-ons per se. But the things that they do add on, it's really at the beginning to set the stage of like, it's World War II. The Blitz is happening. That's why the kids are sent to the country,
right,
to live with Professor Kirk. And they also flesh out the Professor Kirk character a little bit more, which I appreciate because he's Diggory from The Magician's Nephew. So like he was present when Narnia was created. So it gives you that like hint he knows about Narnia. Like he knows the wardrobe is special.
So why is it okay for them to add things in Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, but it's not okay to add things or change things? Like they aged up Caspian in Prince Caspian, and you don't like that. So why is that an issue? But them fleshing out Kirk or adding like scenes with the Blitz or things like, why is that an issue?
I think so Professor Kirk is an existing character, and they're just giving you like a little tiny like nod towards, if you know, you know what I mean? Like at the end, he's like, try me. Like you wouldn't believe us if we told you, sir. Like when they get back through the wardrobe, he's like, try me, because he does know. But it's not like a full on scene. You know what I mean? That they're really going off on a tangent, etc. But like with Caspian, they add in like an invasion scene of the castle, and like Peter's acting like a jerk, so they end up by losing a bunch of soldiers in the battle because he is super stubborn and just wants to like prove himself. I was just reading I was flipping through the big volume of 7 books that you have here. When Peter and Caspian meet in the book, he's like, I'm Peter, I'm High King Peter, but I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take your throne. I'm here to help you get to your throne. Like he makes a point to say that. Meanwhile, in the movie, they're like, he's acting like a jerk the whole time. He's like trying to be like, yeah, just follow me, man. Watch how it's done kind of attitude. And I'm like, no, that's not really like how he's supposed to be acting. And I feel like they're just like, I always feel like they try to make Peter a jerk.
If I can interject something here, Harry Potter angst. That's what they're battling against.
Yeah. They're like, we have teenagers in this movie, so therefore they have to be annoyed with each other. They have to be
annoyed with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the machoism of the two of them.
Yeah.
And because that doesn't, the conflict there's already conflict within the group in Lion Witch in the Wardrobe because of Edmund. And so you don't have to add anything. There's already a tiny little redemption arc in there. And so, but Caspian doesn't have that. Dawn Treader goes even further and doesn't even have an antagonist, right? And so it's just kind of like a series of adventures, like you said. So like, I think Lion Witch in the Wardrobe is the best movie because it's just a better story than the other two.
Yeah.
And so not even that Caspian is less of a story, it's just a different kind of story. And so like they're trying to engage a modern audience without realizing that people are engaged by Narnia the way that it is. Like you don't have to add things. Well, sometimes you have to add things to round out a story. What exists on a page doesn't always work on a screen.
Yeah, or you need to show more on the screen to explain what you read in like 4 pages of text, to be like, well, we don't have time to explain that like through a scene, but like to give people little tidbits some way. So I get that. Like I'm never like, why did they do that for everything? But yeah, it annoys me that they aged up Caspian. I'm like, he's supposed to be like 13.
I think this is like a difference between, so like instead of Glorfindel bringing Frodo to Rivendell, it's Arwen in the movies, right?
Yeah.
So, which is fine because then Arwen just kind of exists otherwise. Like they love each other because they love each other.
Yeah, she doesn't have any story.
Right. But if you see her in kind of like her badassery, like fend off the Wraiths, bring that, you could be like, this isn't equal to the Aragorn that I know or that I'm coming to know. So you can see why they're a fit for each other instead of like a pining elf that just exists to lay around
on a balcony.
To stand on a balcony. Right. So that adds flavor and context to their relationship. But I feel like that's like Professor Kirk, whereas the Peter Caspian stuff is like Legolas in The Hobbit. Yeah.
Look at me started.
I know. And I like Legolas in The Hobbit because The Hobbit does not have tons of that kind of conflict.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, when you're going backwards, it's not as fleshed as Lord of the Rings. So like, it feels like you're just hopping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. So I understand wanting to add familiar faces and texture and flavor, but maybe it's not so much adding Legolas, it's more the no, it is. It's the dwarvish, elvish
love triangle.
Like, it's more that than anything. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about
I know.
Narnia.
we could talk about. I'll complain about The Hobbit anytime.
I know. And I will defend it anytime. do you want to see, if given the choice of no more Narnia movies forever, like you just don't get any more, or they continue with this series in the way that they were headed, what would you choose?
I would see the series.
Would you? You would sail into mediocrity, keep sailing into
mediocrity.
Yeah.
I know, because they were going to make the silver chair, and I was like, oh, that's actually a really good. I actually like the silver chair a lot. It's like kind of creepy and kind of like adventure-y, and they're like going off to find Caspian's son who's gone missing. Because fun factoid, the star lady and Dawn Treader, that becomes his wife. They have a son, Rillian, but she dies because this like mysterious lady of the green kirtle just like turns into a snake and kills her.
Spoilers, but
steals Rillian away, and he's been missing for all this time. So Eustace goes back to Narnia with his friend Jill Pole, who's never been to Narnia, and they go on this interesting adventure to the north. They go into Ettonsmoor, where the giants live, and which you never see the north of Narnia. But I like it mostly because of Puddleglum, the marsh wiggle. He's the best sidekick. He's just like dour all the time and like super pessimistic, but in a funny way.
What's it called? What's he called? Puddleglum the what?
He's a marsh wiggle.
I know many of the listeners don't know you the way that I know you, but if I had to pin anything
of course I love
in
the marsh
here,
wiggle.
yeah, if I had to pin anything in here, it would be Puddleglum the marsh wiggle. That is your favorite.
He lives in like a little reed.
Yeah, of course
wigwam.
He does.
He's got these. Like, he's got reeds for hair. He's got little like amphibious hands and feet. He's super tall and skinny. And, like he just lives in a marsh.
That's the most not surprising thing you've ever said to me.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, I love the marsh wiggle.
Yep. You're very on brand.
Are you surprised I love Narnia? There's talking animals and like.
No, I'm not surprised that you love Narnia at all. It's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm even further not surprised that your favorite character lives in a marsh. It's just that tracks.
They also have a parliament of owls in that one. The little owls all sit together and they all talk to each other about what they're going to do.
That's cute.
It's pretty cute.
That is cute. I'm going to end there because the show is over, just so you're aware. Yep. So you can find us at beerwithgeeks.com and Gmail and Facebook. You can rate and review us on iTunes and find us all other places podcasts can be found. You can also go to thoughtbubbleaudio.com to find all of the Thought Bubble Audio shows, and patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio to support all of our shows. Mary, thanks for coming on and talking about Narnia.
Thanks for having me. This was really very strenuous, coming up our stairs to sit in your office.
And I know you didn't even come up for the podcast. I mean, we were already up here.
True. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I just like moved from my chair to my other chair.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Life's hard sometimes, isn't it?
It's real hard. It's real hard. Blissfully, we were not interrupted by a sleeping baby. She stayed asleep.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get 5 minutes in and she was like, meh.
Yeah. Well, the monitor's off, so maybe that's why.
No, it's not. I can hear the ocean waves.
Okay, I can't hear it. So I thought you turned it off, and I was like,
I can hear it.
Oh, good. Phew, all right. Yeah, I have restored confidence.
She's fine.
Okay, great. Well, Mary, until next time, cheers.
Cheers.